I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided. For too long, Antifa has been allowed to F around and not find out. Well, now they're seeing what find out looks like. Speaking of Antifa, they're targeting the poor, black people, and Hispanics down in Portland right now. And not all Democrats are created equal, especially on the issue of public safety. We're going to bring to light a dishonest campaign flyer in an election coming up in just a couple months. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com. And just click on the banner that says support the show. Hello, and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. It is hot outside. Hot. Way too hot for me. I'm too pale for this shit. But you know what else is hot? Justice. Justice is hot. Just moments before we came on the show today, I got word that some long-awaited justice is finally coming to fruition. I got a text just moments ago that the Seattle Police Department's community response group has arrested the Antifa goon who assaulted our friend, independent journalist Cam Higbee.
Let him go. Let him go. No! Let him go. Let him go.
It, of course, has taken weeks and weeks to get to this point. We know that this happened outside the federal building in downtown Seattle. I believe it was now more than a month ago. Cam Higbee, independent conservative journalist who was down there doing his job, was identified by the crowd. Jeremy Calvin Lawson is the Antifa goon from Monroe, Washington, who was caught on camera very visibly assaulting him. Cam pulled out his pepper spray, sprayed the guy in the face, so he was forced to take off his face covering while he whined about how much it hurt. Our friend Katie Davis-Court, a conservative journalist as well, got his face on video. It took about 24 hours to identify him unequivocally based on his tattoos and images on social media. But for some reason, it has taken a very, very long time for the Seattle Police Department to arrest him. We knew that the case had been handed off to the King County Prosecutor's Office for a charging decision. They opted not to arrest him while that charging decision was being made. So this tells me that a decision has been made to move forward with felony charges against Jeremy Calvin Lawson for his assault on independent journalist Cam Higbee. FAFO, and that is the theme of the first segment of our show today. And it was already the theme before we even got news just a few minutes ago that the community response group had honed in on Mr. Lawson, who I imagine will be making his first court appearance tomorrow, which should be fun for him. So more FAFO, and I'm so happy to see this because, look, I'm against political violence in all forms. And unfortunately, in our state, we have seen for too long, and I would say this goes for a lot of West Coast cities, they have seen this far left political extremism that has gone unchecked. And so what has happened? Well, it's gotten worse and worse and worse and more aggressive and more violent. I mean, the Cam Higbee case is just one example of a brazen assault on a journalist out on the streets of downtown Seattle. And what we're seeing now is there finally being some consequences that are coming to bear thanks to, really in great part, the Trump administration. You have these riots that have been happening in places like Portland and Seattle and LA, and the bulk of the arrests and the charges that are being brought down are by the federal government. I mean, we'll talk about Portland in a moment, but you look at what's been happening outside the ICE facility there for more than a month. Portland police have a responsibility to deal with that criminal conduct. And instead, it's been the feds who have been targeting and arresting individuals in the crowd who've committed criminal acts, and then they're being indicted federally. So it's really the Trump administration that is saying we're not going to tolerate this anymore, especially when it's directed at our federal agents. So there was a case that we talked about a few weeks back in Spokane, Washington, where a former city council president named Ben Stuckert staged what turned into a criminal demonstration outside an ICE facility there. Just as a reminder, he had put out this action alert on his social media. He said, 3 weeks ago, I became the legal guardian to a young man from Venezuela seeking asylum. He has turned in all paperwork and has a future court hearing. I went with him to ICE to check in today. They detained him and are shipping him to Tacoma. I'm asking that if you care at all about these illegal detainers, they're not illegal, you meet me. And then he gave the address of the ICE facility. I'm going to sit in front of the bus. Feel free to join me. The Latino community needs the rest of our community right now, not tonight, not Saturday, but right now. So people did answer that call to action. And he said right there in the post what he was going to do. He was going to impede law enforcement. He was going to obstruct justice. He was going to sit in front of this bus so this Venezuelan kid who he adopted? I don't know. Couldn't be shipped to the ICE holding facility in Tacoma. Here's some video from that day. And you see them there blocking the transport bus. And not only was and that's him on the bullhorn, not only was the transport bus blocked, they spray painted entirely the front windows of the bus so it could not be utilized. And then they were blocking the gates outside the ICE facility. There was a pushing and shoving of ICE agents, and then they took to the streets. So there was a lot of criminal conduct that happened that day at the say-so and direction of this former Democratic, in case you needed me to tell you that, city council president in the city of Spokane. Well, FA, under President Trump, FO. He's now facing federal charges along with a handful of other demonstrators who were there that day, again, at his direction. This from KXLY. Stuckert makes first appearance for ICE protest charges in packed federal courtroom. It says the first group of defendants included Stuckert and then a couple other people, 34-year-old Mickey Hatfield, 38-year-old Bobby Silva. Both Hatfield and Silva face additional charges for assault on a federal officer. Stuckert, along with 8 other community members, is facing federal charges related to the June 11th anti-ICE protest in downtown Spokane. All 9 defendants are charged with conspiracy to impede or injure officers, as they should be. We can't live in a society where it's appropriate for anyone, let alone someone who used to have a position of trust within the community, to encourage people to obstruct justice, to encourage people to confront federal agents, whether they're federal agents or local police or whatever it is. We had a whole summer in Washington state and across the country where Democrats deemed it, I guess, perfectly appropriate to assault local police officers, to obstruct local police officers, and nothing really happened to them. So I guess why wouldn't they now turn that into and turn their ire against federal agents? Well, probably shouldn't have, because now Donald Trump is saying we're not going to tolerate it. So that's good. I also hope that they have a guy named Hunter Henderson in their sights. I had to play this today because I saw it over on social media and I knew we were doing this segment to open the show. There's a Tacoma City Council candidate running right now. His name's Hunter Henderson. He's running for position 6, and they were doing kind of a candidate forum type thing, and he was asked about immigration enforcement. Here's what he said.
I don't like ICE. I would fight ICE.
Oh, he would fight ICE.
If they show up in my neighborhood, they're going to have some problems.
Interesting. Okay, that sounds like a threat against I would fight them. I hope he doesn't make good on that, but he certainly sounds like he's ready to fight ICE or throw down if ICE shows up in his community. In any other state, I would say that guy probably has no chance of being elected, but we're in Washington and saying stuff like that is really cool here. Interesting. So, we see this left-wing faction that's really emboldened to, turn their thoughts into action, to go out, to target ICE agents, to threaten ICE agents, to dox ICE agents, to vandalize, to commit acts of violence. And, it might be easy to sort of write them off as, oh, they're, Antifa lunatics, or there's this weird council candidate, or there's this, left-wing former Spokane City Council president. But the reality is, as we've discussed on the show, this directive is coming from the upper echelons of the Democratic Party. And so I don't think it's fair at this point or accurate for me to suggest that it's really just left-wing extremists who are trafficking in this hate and vitriol and violence. It's not. It is mainstream Democrats who are in positions of great power in states like Washington and across the country. I mean, we talked about Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who was referring to ICE as a terrorist force. And you don't think that that's going to incite violence? I mean, she said that, and then you had these shootings down in Texas targeting Border Patrol agents. And I'm not saying that was directly because of what she said, but I can tell you what she said didn't help. And we've got members of Congress who are calling federal agents carrying out lawful immigration enforcement terrorists. Well, you're giving them a sign-off, essentially, to hurt them or to dox them or to target them. I also had brought up Nick Brown, Washington's chief law enforcer, the Attorney General of the state of Washington, who was on, the local NPR station, RIP NPR, by the way, side note for the vote happening today, who was calling Trump a fascist. And he's literally, as the state's chief law enforcer, giving these unhinged individuals in many instances kind of the fuel they need and the motivation they need and the cover they need to carry out what they're doing. Because if the state's chief law enforcer has told them you're fighting fascism, you're fighting forces as bad as Hitler, then they feel justified in what they're doing. So he was out, and Nicole, what's the context here? He was in Spokane for an event, speaking at an event in Spokane. So he was talking about... What was that?
Like a town hall.
Yeah, town hall style thing. So he was talking about immigration, of course. And what he said is just insane. I mean, the fact that this guy ran as a moderate, he sat here in the studio with me trying to paint himself as a moderate during the election and has become so unhinged in this way. I've said it before. He's the biggest disappointment for me of the 2024 election because I really thought, well, maybe he's not going to be quite as bad as his predecessor, Attorney General Bob Ferguson, who's now our governor. But then he turned around. He sued Donald Trump probably more than Bob Ferguson did during Trump's first term. And he says crazy stuff. So this is, Tri-Cities at a town hall. So he's talking about, he's referencing, remember kids in cages during the first term of the Trump administration that, oh my gosh, Donald Trump is putting kids in cages. So he keeps referencing that as talking about the current immigration issue.
Presidents of both political parties have exercised their federal authority to enforce federal immigration laws and deport people. And that was true under President Biden and President Obama and others. What we are seeing now, from my perspective, from the Trump administration, is not that. It is a real violent, inhumane attack on people of color and a disregard, I think, for their basic humanity. And we have all become somewhat numb to that. And, it was really crystallized for me, for the folks that remember the first Trump administration, we're all old enough, there was a time when they were detaining people coming across the border and putting children in cages. And it was a huge story. And the president kind of obfuscated and denied and tried to explain, and his administration really shied away from that news story. Fast forward to 2025, the president and the Secretary of Homeland Security and all of his supporters cannot wait to get to Alligator Alcatraz and have their picture taken. They cannot wait to show the pictures of people in the prison in El Salvador that is one of the most inhumane carnal institutions in the world. They celebrate it now.
Yeah. So hearkening back to what was a real falsehood of kids in cages. And you'll remember at the time there were images being used to show this kids in cages that were actually taken during the Obama administration, and fact checks had to be made. So just like they're doing now and painting this as violent and inhumane, but other presidents carried out immigration enforcement. The only reason why there's so much of it right now is so much illegal immigration was allowed to happen. So he goes on from here. And again, his words are serving to justify the actions of violent extremists in going after immigration officials.
We're seeing people be, kidnapped essentially off the street by people who are not masked, not identifying themselves, and putting it in unmasked cars. And I think that creates a really, really dangerous situation, not only for them, but for all of us. Because as you rightly highlight, how would you react if someone came up to you and didn't identify themselves and didn't have a clearly marked uniform?
They do have clearly identified marked uniforms.
Grab you and put you in a car or handcuff you. most people, many people at least, would want to fight back and defend themselves or defend their children or family members. And I think it makes it unsafe not only for the people that are on the receiving end for that, but also for law enforcement. And we've also already seen people pretending to be ICE to do carjackings and thefts and robberies. We saw most poignantly to me the murder of a state senator in Minnesota when somebody showed up at their door pretending to be a law enforcement officer, and the state senator, trusting that it was, opened the door. And so I think what we're seeing is not only going to impact those people most directly targeted, but it's going to impact everyone, and it's going to make us less safe.
I mean, none of that makes any sense. So let me first say, people have impersonated law enforcement for as long as law enforcement has been around. There have been criminals who have impersonated law enforcement as a way to commit crimes. That's not the fault of ICE agents right now. I mean, there are people who have created cars to look like law enforcement vehicles so they could prey on women and worn realistic looking uniforms. That has always existed. It's always been wrong and criminal, and it will exist and would exist under any president, regardless of what immigration enforcement was being carried out. This idea, and it is a lie, and if you can find something that tells me it's not a lie, an actual example, this idea that you have ICE with no markings whatsoever, nothing, no bulletproof vest that says ICE, police, DHS, nothing at all, aren't identifying themselves and saying, hey, we're detaining you, here's why. The idea that that's happening is a falsehood. I have not seen one video that's full context that suggests that you actually have individuals who are masked with no identifiers whatsoever, who from beginning to end don't identify themselves as federal agents at all, who are kidnapping people and putting them in vans. Because, I mean, point well taken. First of all, if a van pulled up and people who were masked got out and had no identifier whatsoever, and they just grabbed me, I'd be freaked out. But I also haven't broken any laws and I'm not in the country illegally. So I genuinely would be racking my brain trying to think about, am I being kidnapped right now? Because I know I didn't commit a crime. But if you're in the country illegally right now in the United States, you know that your day could be today. You know that any minute you could be caught by the Trump administration and deported from this country. So this idea that if these people with guns and all this show up, that you don't know what's going on, is absurd. And again, it's simply not happening. So now you have the Attorney General of the state of Washington, who is not only a fearmongerer, but he's a liar. So he's lying. There are no examples. Nick Brown, if your office can send me some examples, again, fully in context video from beginning to end of the interaction that shows ICE agents did not identify themselves whatsoever, that they did not inform the person as to why they were being taken into custody, that they did not have any identifying, not a badge, not a vest, not a jacket, nothing. You show me that and I will apologize to you, sir. But all we do, our job is to look at these videos. Our job is to follow the news. And I have not seen one in context video that proves that what you're saying is true. You are just trying to scare people shitless so they keep voting for you and your party. And like you complain that these immigrants are out there scared. So first of all, they're in the country illegally. They have probably been scared about being caught, and that's not our fault or Trump's fault. That's their own fault. They put themselves in that situation where they were in our country living in this gray area where any day they could be deported. But also, you don't think what you're saying there is making them even more scared? You're telling them they're going to get kidnapped off the streets? I mean, and put in cages. Yeah, it's called a jail cell. Like, what is it? We've had cages again. As long as we've had jails and prisons, we've had cages. It's called a jail cell. How else would you suggest that we hold people who are accused of crimes while they're awaiting trial or deportation? So shame on Nick Brown. And here's the craziest, I think, clip from this town hall he did in the Tri-Cities.
I think the way that we change that is that we get back to what we did in 2017 when we voiced our collective outrage about kids in cages. We need to be doing the same thing when it comes to unmasked vigilantes, purporting to act on behalf of the president.
Vigilantes purporting to act on behalf of the president? Do you mean federal law enforcement agents? Career public servants who have risked their lives for this country? Vigilantes purporting to act on behalf of the president? They're not acting on behalf of the president. They're acting on behalf of the United States. They're acting in furtherance of enforcing federal law that is on the books today. They're acting entirely lawfully, and they wouldn't have to wear masks, sir, if it weren't for people like you, if it weren't for politicians like you, calling them fascists, suggesting they're kidnapping people off the streets without cause, calling them vigilantes. They've got people down in Portland, Antifa's writing the names of ICE agents and their addresses in chalk on the sidewalk. Down in Tacoma right now, there are flyers put up on telephone poles with the faces and home addresses of federal agents who have families. Under what circumstance, Attorney General Nick Brown, the state's chief law enforcer, is that acceptable? And you want to complain that they're covering their faces? Well, maybe you shouldn't say things that make it more likely that people are going to attack them or try to kill them. What a disappointment you are. To me, to the state, to the voters, to sane people, and to the job that you're supposed to hold as someone who cares about the law. You're an attorney. These laws are on the books. If you have a problem with the laws, go after the laws. Can you play that clip again, Nicole? Did I really hear that coming out of this man's mouth?
I think the way that we change that is that we get back to what we did in 2017 when we voiced our collective outrage about kids in cages. We need to be doing the same thing when it comes to unmasked vigilantes, purporting to act on behalf of the president.
Holy smokes. And also, so do the same thing you did during Kids in Cages, so lie and grandstand? I mean, the mayor of Seattle was down at the southern border during the Kids in Cages. I mean, AOC with a staged photo of her crying at this gate that she couldn't get through, and the Kids in Cages were just on the other side. I mean, it's insane. Nick Brown, shame on you. ICE agents, if an ICE agent's killed in this state, I'm going to blame you. You have blood on your hands. What an asinine thing to say. And again, if your office can provide me with some sort of video evidence, not, activists said this happened. No, video evidence that shows that there is actually immigration agents with no identifying markers whatsoever scooping people off the street, I would be on your side and say, we can't have that. They have to identify themselves in some way. And I'll also tell you, if a cop, even today, knowing I've committed no crimes, think about it. Yeah, no crimes that I know of. If a police officer knocked on my door today, even if I saw they were in a uniform, I would call 911. In my job, that's just kind of the safe thing to do, because why again? Since the beginning of time, people have impersonated law enforcement officers. If it's a real cop at my door, then I can call 911. They can make sure, yep, that's an officer, here's his badge number at your door, it's safe to open it up. And they would have no problem in the world doing that. It's insane stuff. So all of that's happening, and who are these people that are being fed this line of BS that they're fighting against vigilantes, and they're fighting against fascists, and they're fighting against terrorists? Well, of course, it's these just weak-minded, unhinged, sad, little desperate Antifa types, right? So what's happening in Portland is even more bizarre than your typical Antifa action. So these are, a lot of them socialists, run in like democratic socialist circles, very far left wing, and they come together to riot over anything, and they've done it for years, right? Anti-police, anti-Amazon, during the Occupy movement, whatever it is, they're going to come out and riot for it. So we've talked about a couple of these things, but I just need to paint this picture to you. First of all, almost exclusively, these are young white kids. I saw like one black person at the Antifa occupation outside the ICE facility in Portland, and it was so fascinating because they're a small person. They're like a little person. Is that the nice word? They're like a little person. But and everybody knows who it is. It's like a black guy, he's a little person, and he's always around Antifa Portland, and he's still covering his face. I'm like, dude, You know, you're the one little person. Everybody knows who you are. So the covering of your face isn't really going to help. But by and large, these are like 20 to 30-year-old white angsty kids. Some of them Nepo babies, like that sort of a thing. And you would think as like socialists, oh my gosh, they really care about people of color. They care about the poor. And they certainly care about Hispanics, right? Because they're there trying to stand up for brown people who are being kidnapped off the streets because of the color of their skin, right? Except everything they're doing is sort of undermining all of that. So of course we have the, across the street from this is this low-income housing, this low-income apartment. And there's been this woman who now the videos are all over, we've showed it many times, of her confronting Antifa because she couldn't sleep because they were blowing into this noise machine all hours of the night. Here's the video.
Turn that shit down! It's midnight! I will turn it down. I would love to. You just have to ask nice, and I'm being nice even though
Little
you're
white
screaming.
Antifa.
You!
No, black woman, you don't deserve to
Every
sleep.
night I'm destroying and wrecking your shit! Turn it down! We the people need sleep!
Love her. So you've got all these little white kids, all these privileged little white kids in their ninja costumes who on all these other occasions, oh my gosh, we care about BIPOC communities. We're showing up for BIPOC communities. That's what they were doing in 2020 in the summer of love and standing up for the black community, you know, standing against the police. But here they are. No, we don't care, black woman, if you can't sleep in your low income apartment building because we're doing something that's more important than you, right? So it has only gone further from there. So this low-income apartment building has like a food bank type thing in it. So the residents of the apartment can access easily, you know, food, right? Okay. So Antifa is taking their food from their food bank. So much for caring about poor people. Numer Arch, who's the woman you saw in that video, Antifa is rebuilding their camp. And it includes food taken from my building's food bank supplies meant for residents. So the camp got swept. It's been swept a couple times by law enforcement. So she sees they're rebuilding it, complete with food from the food bank that's supposed to help the poor people who live in the low-income apartment. And I thought these were the socialists who care about the poor and who care about the people of color. They're literally taking food out of a poor person of color's mouth. Crazy. Oh, it gets crazier. So there was another low-income, a woman who lives in this low-income apartment who spoke to an independent journalist about what she's been through. And she's been harassed and threatened with violence.
I live only on disability. And I thought I'd found a gold mine here. I mean, I have to pay half of my monthly check to live here, but it's still a roof over my head. And now I carry bear mace and I'm scared all the time. And I'm afraid to go outside. He has a rap sheet a mile long and he's threatened people, threatened to cut this lady's head off and you make stew out of it and was going to post her face on. And I'm quite honestly afraid to do this interview. But I found out a long time ago, if you run from bullies, then they just keep doing what they're doing. And when I asked the prosecuting attorney with his long history why he hasn't been put away before now, because he's been arrested for multiple altercations, and they said, because he's slippery. Which means people are too afraid to testify because they are doxing people and they're putting their face, and they'll probably come after me and I'll probably hide. I'm currently trying to get out of here as bad, but I'm on a very limited income and I have no money in savings. And so how the heck am I going to get out of here?
Yeah, I've been threatened by this Antifa goon who keeps threatening people, threatened to make a stew out of someone's head. So now we're working on a trifecta here. Antifa going after black people, going after the poor, and now going after the elderly. Why settle for a trifecta? We can add what's a quadfecta? Is that a thing? Because you know who they're also going after? Antifa? Hispanic people. I thought they were there to stand up for the Hispanic people. No, a white Antifa chick punched a Hispanic guy in the face, splitting open his lip outside this ICE center. This from an account, Ryan Amateur on X, who's been down there covering things. Earlier in the night, I witnessed peak Antifa insanity. A mid-20s blonde protester straight up uppercut a 45-year-old Hispanic man, Terrell Charles, splitting his lip wide open. The two started shouting, then shoving. Chaos followed. Charles lunged to grab she had like a thing in her hand that makes noises. Stumbled and boom, she landed a clean shot to the face. He called 911. The ambulance came quick and she vanished into the night. As of this point, the mystery Marxist Barbie remains unidentified. So we've got it all here. Far lefties, socialists who usually stand up for people of color, the disadvantaged, the poor. Well, now they're threatening black people, threatening the elderly, stealing food from the poor, and punching Hispanics in the face. Wild stuff. And just as a cherry on top of the crazy pie, there's this video that's been going around from our friend Katie Davis-Cord, who's been down there, God bless her, day in and day out while this occupation has been happening. There is this Antifa rioter who claims to be a teacher, and I have no reason to believe that she isn't a teacher, telling ICE agents to kill themselves.
I have a clean record. I am a teacher. When I first came out here, all I was talking about on the megaphone was how scared I am for my students and how upset I am for their fear that they are showing in class every day. But as I have been physically assaulted as a peaceful protester half a dozen times, I have become more radical. I have become more extreme. So my megaphone speeches of saying, please think about the children, have slowly turned into, fuck, kill yourself.
Yes, because that's the person we want teaching the youth of America. Tries to stand there and say, I was assaulted as a peaceful demonstrator, and I was just here saying, think of the children. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. So now that's the excuse. Oh, ICE assaulted me as a peaceful demonstrator. And so now, instead of saying, think of the children, I'm going to tell you to kill yourselves. These people are insane. And look, I get that. Like, the Antifa types truly are nut jobs. They truly are lowest common denominator, nut jobs, desperately searching for meaning and acceptance in life. Truly. That doesn't mean they're not violent. That doesn't mean they're not dangerous. But they are true nut jobs. The real shame, I think, in all of this is that you have the city of Portland, the Portland Police Department, and when it happens in Seattle, the mayor of Seattle, that will look the other way, that will see these truly unhinged people who are willing to go after anyone, even if it's totally counter to what they claim they care for. The poor, the black, Hispanics, the black people, Hispanic people, the elderly, all in pursuit of like whatever the cause of the day is. And what? The city of Portland is so scared of them that they won't do anything about it? The city of Seattle's so scared of them that they won't do anything about it? He's like 20-something Nepo white kids living off their parents' money, trying to find some sort of struggle in life to cling to? And you're what, so scared of them that you won't just go round them up? And instead, these poor people who found this low-income apartment that they love have to move? Wild stuff. Wild stuff. I am glad, though, that the feds, the only entity that seems to be doing anything about it, has now arrested dozens of those Antifa rioters in Portland, and dozens of them are facing pretty serious federal charges. So FAFO, as long as the feds step in. All right, coming up next, not all Democrats are created equal. This is an important message we always share with this audience. I think there's a lot of conservatives that watch, but it's really important. We've got some elections coming up where if you are typically a Republican voter, you cannot sit out D-on-D races. You cannot sit out D-on-D races. You're going to have to pick a Democrat. And some of the Democrats are truly much better than the others. So we'll have this report coming up next. First, I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge because I'm trying to save you money here. Why would you not want to save money? And plus, First Mark is an exceptional company, exceptional service, honest broker, and they've worked with so many undivided viewers and listeners over the last few years. Amy says her husband finally contacted Firstmark, and they were super helpful. She says our current insurance actually ended up being the best bet for now, but we're glad we contacted them to confirm. Thanks for the recommendation. That, to me, is the sign of an honest company. Just telling them your current insurance is great. We'd stick with that. On the other hand, undivided viewer Jacob says we recently changed our insurance over to your awesome sponsors at Firstmark. They saved us $600 plus on our home and around $2,000 a year for our family's cars. They were honest and easy to work with. And so $2,600 a year? What would you buy with $2,600 a year that you'd save by not just dumping it into insurance premiums? So either way, Firstmark Insurance is going to be a good bet to do the Firstmark Challenge and just get answers. Either you already have great insurance and you don't have to do anything, and they're just going to confirm that for you. You can pat yourself on the back and walk away. Or you could be saving thousands of dollars a year. And you know what? If you don't need that money, if for some reason you're like, I don't need to save thousands of dollars a year, Brandi, do it anyway and then give us that money. We'll take it. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. I've seen a lot of dishonest political ads. That's just part of the game. I mean, there's been dishonest political ads as long as there have been political ads. But the ones that really grind my gears are the ones about public safety and telling lies about public safety. This is one such ad. Let's talk about it in our segment. Unbelievable. Dun, 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 dun. All right, you might think it's an off year, and so maybe you're not as in tune with elections that are happening. Shame on you. It's never an off year in politics. And there's actually, in the state of Washington, a lot of special elections being held because, you know, the puzzle pieces down in the state legislature were all moved around. There was a state senator elected to Congress. There were, unfortunately, a couple deaths among state legislators this year. And so, you know, there were some vacancies filled, and that means they have to actually run for those seats. So there's some really important races happening. There'll be an August primary and then the election in November. So the August primary is just a couple weeks away. So we're going to start talking about some of these really important races. Now, one of them is in the 33rd Legislative District. So this includes SeaTac, Normandy Park, Des Moines, parts of Kent, Burien, and Renton. So the seat there is right now held by Edwin Obras, who's a Democrat. Edwin Obras was appointed, I think you have this right, Nicole. Edwin Obras was appointed to fill a vacancy. So he was appointed in 2024 by Democrats. He was their choice to fill a vacancy, but he has to now run to actually be elected to that seat. And who is challenging him? The current mayor of Burien, Kevin Schilling, also a Democrat, is challenging him. Now, I think there's a Republican in the race. I don't mean to be mean, but the Republican has no chance of winning in this district. So I'm sorry. Take that for what you want, but the Republican has no chance of winning. So it's going to be one of these two. It's either going to be Edwin Obras, who is the hand-picked Democrat who was picked to fill that seat, or Burien Mayor Kevin Schilling. Now, we've had Kevin Schilling on the show quite a bit. Kevin Schilling has been on the show because he has been speaking out aggressively about the state and King County's policies around homelessness. We'll get to more on that in a moment. But Kevin Schilling is absolutely a public safety Democrat. He's a very moderate Democrat, and he has been very outspoken against his own party about their lack of focus on public safety and about the policies they have pushed to make public safety worse. So he's like the epitome of a public safety candidate, which is odd because here is a flyer that Edwin Obras's campaign, an attack mailer, sent out. And if you saw this flyer, you would think that Kevin Schilling hates cops and he hates public safety. It says Kevin Schilling, the worst mayor in the state on police staffing. The Burien police expressed no confidence in Burien Mayor Kevin Schilling. Burien has the lowest number of officers per capita. So this is like a Kevin Schilling hates cops. Cops hate Kevin Schilling. He's horrible on public safety. And this flyer says, say yes to public safety, say no to Kevin Schilling. Holy smokes. That's about as bad as it gets. So I'm going to break down why this is true bullshit. But it shows this, and you guys know this by now because it's one of the chief things that I was angry about during the campaign of then gubernatorial candidate Bob Ferguson, now our governor, is after years and years of giving the middle finger to law enforcement, like literally trying police officers for murder who were acquitted by a jury of their peers, even in a very progressive city. The jury's like, they're not guilty. He turned around and ran a campaign saying he was like the public safety candidate, which was just crazy. But you can just say it, and it's not true. But if voters believe it, then, you can get away with it. And unfortunately, I think a lot of voters were fooled by Bob Ferguson saying he's the public safety candidate, because he only made public safety worse, and he's only 6 months on the job. So Edwin Obras probably saw that and thought, well, I can lie too. I can lie too and say that Kevin Schilling is bad for public safety and he hates cops. Who's going to say anything about it? We are. And now I'm going to make it my dying mission to make sure that you don't get to keep this seat you were appointed to simply because of this one mailer. So let's talk a little bit about the claims he makes about Kevin Schilling here, because it is true that Mayor Kevin Schilling got into a little bit of a dust-up disagreement with the Burien Police Department. That is totally true. But there, of course, are a lot of layers to that story. So it all centers around how bad the homeless crisis was getting in the city of Burien. And we played this video before. I mean, tents on the sidewalks in the business district in Burien. It's a pretty small city, but it had become overrun with homeless people and drug abusers. And as a result, there was a lot of crime in this area. And as the mayor of the city, Kevin Schilling is like, this is unacceptable. We can't have tents in the public park across from City Hall. We can't have tents on the sidewalks. And he took a very hard stance on it. And they passed an ordinance in the city of Burien that said you can't camp in public places. If we have shelter to offer, you can't camp in public places, and we're not going to allow it anymore. So what happened? Well, the Burien Police Department said we're not enforcing that. And you might think, well, why? Because who actually runs the Burien Police Department? It's a contract city. It's run by the King County Sheriff's Office. It's run by the King County Sheriff, who is what? A political appointee. At the time, a political appointee of an unhinged progressive politician named King County Executive Dow Constantine. And he made homelessness exponentially worse during his 16 years on the job. And he wanted there to be a hands-off approach to the homeless. He didn't want homeless camp sweeps. Can't have that. So Dow Constantine took his little puppet, the King County Sheriff, who controls the Burien Police Department, and they said, we're not enforcing the city of Burien's new rule to sweep homeless encampments. Not only are we not going to enforce it, we're going to sue Mayor Kevin Schilling and the city of Burien so we don't have to enforce it. Here was a clip we played at the time where Kevin Schilling was so mad about that, he goes on the news and calls out his own political party.
This is all motivated by politics.
Burien Mayor Kevin Schilling believes
I appreciate that question.
King County Executive Dow Constantine is behind today's announcement.
The chief says whatever Dow Constantine wants her to say. She's the appointed sheriff of the King County Executive.
This is 100% my decision. The executive gives me full authority for the operational considerations for the King County Sheriff's Office.
So he did get into a dust-up with the Burien Police Department. Who gets to choose the chief of the Burien Police Department? They're all controlled by the King County Sheriff, who is a political appointee of Democrats. So here you've got this Democrat, Mayor Kevin Schilling, who is going against his own party. Not so there's less public safety, so there's more public safety. Not so there's less policing, so there's more policing. And of course, he was right all along. There were stories that came out in the days after King County said we're not enforcing this. This from Burien News. Since Dow halts Burien camping enforcement, second homeless death in 3 weeks. This is what Kevin Schilling was trying to avoid. People were dying in those homeless encampments in Burien. That was the reason they wanted to go in and sweep them. But King County and political appointees said don't do that, and people kept dying. And ultimately, I would just note that the city of Burien prevailed in the lawsuits. So they kind of countersued. They sued the county for breach of interlocal agreement, their contract with the county for policing. And in all of this, who was right at the end of the day? Who did even these very progressive courts side with? They sided with the city of Burien and Mayor Kevin Schilling. That he had a right to go in and try to make his city more safe by sweeping these homeless encampments. So that's the guy that Edwin Obras, in his first campaign mailer, is painting as bad for public safety? Doesn't get more dishonest than that. Yes, it does. Just kidding. Because Edwin Obras himself is the antithesis of a public safety candidate. Why do you think Democrats hand-selected him to fill that vacancy? Because they knew that he was willing to vote with them every step of the way without questioning anything. And he did. In his first year in the legislature, just this past legislative session, just a couple of the public safety policies that he voted in favor of, House Bill 1125, remember that was the judicial discretion to end prison sentences early. It would have allowed judges to let even murderers out of prison early. Edwin Obras voted for that. And now he has the audacity to say that his opponent isn't a public safety candidate. Edwin Obras also voted for House Bill 1178. This was the one that would have reduced sentences for gang members and reduced sentences for people who use guns to commit crimes. Edwin Obras voted for that out of the Public Safety Committee. Both of those things were on our list of the top 10 worst bills being considered in Olympia this past legislative session. And they were the two worst bills from a public safety perspective. Edwin Obras voted for both of them. And he has the audacity to send out a mailer saying his opponent, who has a strong track record on public safety, is the worst thing that could happen for public safety. I don't have to tell you how stupid the cops think that mailer was. There was a statement put out by the Law Enforcement Administrators of Washington taking Representative Edwin Obras to task for this sham of a mailer. They say Representative Obras's claim to be a champion for public safety or law enforcement officers is appalling. In addition to voting in favor of nearly every anti-public safety bill that passed the House Community Safety Committee, Representative Obras never once met with representatives of Washington's law enforcement leaders at any point during the 105-day legislative session, despite multiple requests to meet. They went on to say, it is telling that the first piece of legislation bearing his name was House Bill 1125, which sought to release convicted felons out of prison early. They went on to say there were no less than 6 different bills in the House during the 2025 legislative session that sought to provide more funding to Washington's law enforcement agencies. Representative Obras co-sponsored and championed the only one of the 6 that would allow $100 million to be spent without hiring a single new law enforcement officer. So Representative Obras, remember this is a big promise of Bob Ferguson's. Oh, I'm going to dedicate $100 million to hiring more cops. What happened? Well, he claimed to dedicate $100 million to hiring more cops, but actually when you read the fine print, it's contingent on cities increasing taxes, and then they can really use that money to do whatever they want as long as they deem it public safety, emergency management. They could hire more counselors. Not a dollar of it actually has to be spent on hiring more law enforcement officers, and that is the version that Representative Edwin Obras championed and had his name on. The worst of all the versions available. The version that does the least for public safety. And now he's out painting Kevin Schilling as the anti-public safety candidate. The guy's a liar, and he has no shame. The Law Enforcement Administrators of Washington concluded their statement by saying, Representative Obras's campaign mailer is more of the same voter gaslighting that makes public safety so elusive in the legislature. The Law Enforcement Administrators of Washington already supported Kevin Schilling for state representative. Having seen Representative Obras's campaign tactics, we support Kevin even more. Law enforcement leaders support Kevin Schilling because Kevin supports public safety. And I would just say, from my perspective, and again, I think we have, I would say, mostly independents and Republicans who watch this show. If you live in the 33rd legislative district, there is a big difference between these two Democrats. Night and day. And it's not just on the public safety front. Edwin Obras was given this seat by Democrats. And in return, he voted with them on every single major issue. Rent control, he voted in favor of it. Pay for striking union workers, he voted in favor of it. Gutting the Parental Bill of Rights, he voted in favor of it. He is a far-left Democrat who will never go against his own party. Now, Kevin Schilling is a Democrat. I disagree with Kevin Schilling on some things. I am sure that if he wins this race and he goes to Olympia, there will be votes he takes that I do not agree with. But I know that he is a much better option. If you are a sane human being, he is a much better option than the alternative. So while I'm not going to get too involved in politics like I did in 2024, I will make a recommendation in this race that you vote for Kevin Schilling for State House in the 33rd Legislative District. Even though there'll be a Republican on the ballot, what you don't want to do is to do what you want to do, first of all. Do what you want to do. But whatever Democrat makes it through the primary is obviously the person who's going to win. So if you vote for a Republican and send Edwin Obras through, Edwin Obras, who voted for all those crazy public safety policies, all the far-left socialist policies, will get to keep his job. So your vote as a Republican, as an independent, absolutely matters in the August primary. And more than any of that, I don't like a liar. And I don't like somebody who lies to voters over an issue like public safety, which is truly life or death. Not all Democrats are created equal. All right, coming up next in national news, we got to now talk about the Jeffrey Epstein thing. Donald, you got to calm down. You've got to calm down on this. First, if your retirement portfolio was a sports team, how did it perform in the first half of 2025? Have you looked at it? Do you know? Is the person handling your retirement portfolio making any halftime changes for the second half? Is your financial advisor doing anything at all? Do you know? If not, join Bulwark Capital's Zach Abraham for his halftime webinar Thursday, July 24th. Bulwark's halftime webinar will not be a rah-rah speech. It'll be a straight-up X's and O's discussion on global unrest affecting the market, perspective on the outlook for the second half of 2025, plus a full reveal of how Bulwark is always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give your retirement as much upside as possible. Hear directly from Zach Abraham as he shares insights in this free halftime webinar happening Thursday, July 24th. That's just next week. So register now at knowyourriskpodcast.com, knowyourriskpodcast.com. And if you can't make the webinar, at least get a second opinion on your retirement portfolio. It's totally free. Schedule your free Know Your Risk portfolio review at knowyourriskpodcast.com. And tonight, a new episode of Doge Watch with Zach Abraham coming out. All right, in some national news, I don't know what is going on. I don't know if there's an Epstein list. I don't know if this is a semantic situation. I have no idea. All I know is it is absolutely driving a wedge between some pretty key figures in the MAGA movement and President Trump. And look, I will give the MAGA base credit for this because clearly they are able to think independently. They are willing to dissent. They are willing to call out their own party and a president who they've been very supportive of when he does something that they think is wrong. And I give them credit for that because I don't think there's a lot of Democratic talking heads who were willing to do the same under Biden. Now, do I think they're going a little overboard? Maybe. But Donald Trump is handling this exactly the wrong way. Because the more he sort of doth protest too much, the more he comes out and says, I don't get what the big deal is, the more people believe that there is absolutely information being hidden, and it's being hidden by Donald Trump. So I'll play a couple examples. So he's been asked about this a bunch. Here he is asked yesterday.
He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say, let them have it.
Why not just say that? Yeah, anything that's credible, let him have it. But instead he's talking about this is boring stuff. No, he was he victimized kids. Like, Jeffrey Epstein, the story is true about what Jeffrey Epstein engaged in. I mean, there's cases going back to Florida and long before, Donald Trump even came on the scene. And so this idea that you kind of dismiss it, especially at a time when your base truly believes that there's some very, very powerful people who frequented Epstein Island, maybe helped in the trafficking of children, sexually abused children, and now you're acting like it's not a big deal. That is not what your base wants to hear. And if it were just a few, people on the internet, fine, but we're talking about like the Megyn Kellys of the world, the Charlie Kirks of the world, the Joe Rogans of the world, who have massive audiences, the biggest audiences on earth, did a lot to help you get elected. And now you're just sort of like, I don't know why they're obsessed with this. It makes no sense. He was asked again yesterday getting off the plane.
What did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the file?
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden. We went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Yeah.
God, just say that. Just say, yes. Pam Bondi has my permission to release anything that's credible. Obviously, he's right, the Russia hoax and all these things. There's been a ton of I think malicious intel on a variety of issues that's there to make President Donald Trump look bad. Like, we know that Trump's name, we've known this for years, that his name appears in some federal investigative reports about Epstein, but it didn't have it in the context of him committing any wrongdoing. I mean, he was friends with Epstein. He knew Epstein. There's photos of them together, but that doesn't mean that he did anything with children. And I would also say that if there was anything implicating President Trump in the Epstein situation, Biden would have released it. They threw everything else at him. So that tells me that there's nothing even manufactured in there about Trump, because it would have been released the second Trump decided to run for a second term. So I just don't understand what's happening here. I'm not even going to play that third clip because it's just redundant to this. Unless you think it's good. Oh, it's the best one. Okay, go ahead. I know. Go ahead.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the
big
Democrats.
Hoax?
And some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net. And so they try and do the Democrats' work. The Democrats are good for nothing other than these hoaxes. They're bad for policy. He's dead. He's gone. And all it is the Republicans, certain Republicans got duped by the Democrats, and they're following a Democrat playbook. And no different than Russia, and all the other hoaxes. They're started by the Democrats, and some Republicans, in this case I was surprised, but they got duped.
Your office and the Attorney General invited these conservative influencers to the White House and gave them a binder that said the Epstein files on it, and said they were going to release the Epstein client list on multiple occasions. So who'd they get duped by? You? Pam Bondi? Because you were talking on the campaign trail, we're going to release the Epstein files. Pam Bondi, I've got them on my desk. I'm going to review them for release. Let's invite the biggest conservative influencers and give them this big binder that was a big nothing burger. So if anyone duped them, you duped them. But again, it's not a hoax, and it spits in the face of the victims of Epstein to call any of this a hoax or refer to it in that setting, because this really did happen. Now, the existence of a client list and what that looks like, are we talking about semantics here, or what is it? But Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes are not a hoax. So to compare that to something like the Russia hoax or the Steele dossier and things that were genuinely hoaxes manufactured by the Democrats is so stupid. And again, it gets into that doth protest too much. Why are you doing this? And maybe he's just genuinely annoyed at this point. And then he had this long Truth Social post. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he talks about all these other scams and hoaxes, etc. He said their new scam, the Democrats, is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters have bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. I've had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history. And all these people want to talk about with strong prodding by the fake news and the success star of Dems is Jeffrey Epstein. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't ever think about talking about our incredible and unprecedented success because I don't want their support anymore. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. I mean, Donald, chill out. I know that you're not running again, so maybe you don't care if you have the support of people like Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk and other individuals, but there's a midterm coming up. There's a midterm coming up, and you don't need to alienate these individuals, and you don't have to insult their intelligence by acting like Epstein is a hoax. It's not a hoax. Now, if you want to come out and say, look, we'll release anything that's credible, there's a lot of stuff in there that's accusations. We haven't found any evidence to prove it, so we're not going to slander people's names. But anything that's credible, we'll release because we want to put a rest to any of the rumors. Just say that. And what are you doing? It's just so weird. Now at this point, I'm like, what is he hiding, you know? I'm totally now freaking out about it. All right, anyway, we'll get to our daily subscriber show poll coming up next and your questions and comments. First, there's a great conference coming up. I'll be there. Hopefully you'll be there too if you care about housing policy in the state of Washington. It is the Engage Conference held by our sponsors at the Rental Housing Association of Washington. It's October 22nd to 23rd at Maidenbauer Center in Bellevue. They're going to be talking about all things housing policy. I think the panel I'm hosting this year is similar to the one I did last year on how the media covers housing, which, as we know, is totally unhinged and totally whatever the Democrats want them to say about housing policy. So we'll be talking about that. But gosh, if you're a landlord, thinking about becoming a landlord, trying to get out of being a landlord, if you're a builder, developer, this is a really interesting conference to go to. So sign up at rhawa.org. And while you're there, if you are a small to mid-size housing provider, consider becoming a member of RHA. They will help you navigate this messy situation we're in Washington around housing laws and housing policy. And they are also the entity that is down in Olympia trying to give common sense a comeback and make sure that housing doesn't get even more expensive and that more people don't leave the state and sell their rental units. rhawa.org, rhawa.org. I got to ask, Nicole, what was the look you just had on your face for?
I was actually just debating the poll because I knew you were going to ask me next. So in my head, I was trying to think of what my answer was going to be. All right. Well, I hope you thought of it because I'm going to get to our daily subscriber show poll, which is an exclusive feature on Patreon, Locals, and X for our paid subscribers. I said, what issue do you believe will most factor into control of Congress if the midterm elections were held today? I know it's a pretty open-ended question. Yeah. But if this is what, I mean, you're really looking at the kind of the swing voters, right? Mm-hmm. So they're going to determine control of Congress, razor thin margins right now. Will it be immigration? If it was held today, immigration, the economy, foreign affairs, or social issues, like, for instance, Jeffrey Epstein's client list. Yeah, so it's the swing voters.
Swing voters. I mean, right, because that's all.
Gosh,
only people
that
that
is
change.
really hard.
Is it?
I guess maybe economy, because I do think we are better off right now than we were maybe 7 months ago.
Okay, so you think in a positive way the economy will help Trump?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I do think right now feels better than it did 7 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Egg prices are down, and in every other state, the gas prices are down.
Yeah.
So I think maybe economy could help us.
Yeah. Every other state, let's be clear.
Yes. Every other state.
Washington, not down
us.
here.
But it doesn't matter here. So
yeah, it's the people here. I've got to say, definitely not foreign affairs, because I don't think he's done anything so bad or so extraordinary that it would really sway people. Like, for instance, Ukraine is still Ukraine. No, I think he's done great stuff, but I think it's fallen within expectations of what people had for him, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think social issues have also fallen within expectations. Woo. For me, it's down to immigration or the economy, but I have to say, if it were held today, immigration, because it's just this key issue, and there is this big narrative that he is being cruel and he's rounding up people's neighbors. So I guess it matters whether swing voters fall for that. To me, I'm even more excited about Donald Trump based on what's happening with immigration.
I mean,
and maybe I'm soulless and I don't have a heart.
I don't think people are falling for that narrative. That's the thing. I don't see that as a winning narrative right now.
For Trump. Yeah, maybe you're right. So let's see. 52% of you said if the midterm elections were held today, you believe the issue that most factor into control of Congress is immigration. 52% immigration, 37% the economy, then social issues and foreign affairs with a small portion. Sandy says they're doing a horrible job with immigration, with over 80% of those being detained having no criminal history. I don't have the information in front of me to fact check that. It is not what most people who voted for Trump were expecting. They wanted to get the criminals out. And I do think they are getting the criminals out. And I even said, leading up to the election, that I didn't want to see or think it was feasible to do some sort of mass deportation that focused on, for instance, undocumented illegal workers. But I also have now come to kind of realize that it's the sanctuary policies that are leading to more individuals getting caught up in these sweeps. So I feel a little bit differently about it. Aura says, pretty torn between economy, social issues, and immigration. Ended up picking economy only because you asked today, and there's this noise around HR 1. E says, we have 1.5 years before midterms. 1 billion things will happen between now and then. Who cares? I care. And it's my poll, so that's what I wrote. Right. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's important, and I just disagree, because I think that you always have to have, and look, we're always in election mode in this country. And if you don't think that what happens now is going to factor into the midterms or the direction of things, and this is the time where you change course if you have to. This is the time where you have to be weighing, as President Donald Trump and the Republicans who are in the majority and control Congress, are we going in a direction that is going to significantly hurt us in the midterms? And if so, do we need to change course? Because if you're going to change course, you got to do it now. You can't wait until 2 months before the midterm elections.
I think as far as immigration, it is about 72% have no other criminal history, but being here illegally is
right. Yes,
a criminal
I should
history.
know.
And this is that's what we voted for. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this is what we were told we were going to get when we voted for him. So I don't necessarily believe that to be true. I think that if you voted red, this is what you voted for. I don't know that that's going to change I don't know that you're going to be like, oh no, like I'm going to change my vote because this isn't what I voted for. I don't I'm going to change my vote for Congress because this isn't what I voted for. No, I think that's a different topic. So I don't think you're changing your vote for Congress based on what's going on with ICE. So I don't know.
And I'm a good barometer for this, right? Because I came around to Trump late, but I also have been hesitant about some of his immigration things. For instance, birthright citizenship. I do not believe he has the authority to be able to change birthright citizenship in the way that he's gone about changing it. But do I think that's worse than allowing unfettered illegal immigration into our country? No. Like, when I put those things on a scale, like the birthright citizenship thing, I think is stupid, but I still see his immigration policies as a net good compared to what was happening under the Biden administration. So if I'm going to judge immigration policies, it's going to be judged against what was happening under the Biden administration and my desire not to go back to that place. So if I see him doing anything that outweighs that, where I would literally rather see mass illegal immigration again, other than what Donald Trump is doing, I don't see how we could ever get to that point.
But I really think I think people are looking more at this big beautiful bill and the way that it's been sold. So if you agree with the narrative coming out or not,
I don't think people are paying attention to the big beautiful bill. Besides just like they don't know what's in it. I think most, not our viewers are smart, but most passive news consumers, they don't know what's in the one big beautiful
that's what
bill.
I mean. They're getting told what's in it. I don't think they're getting told the truth about what's in it, but I think they're getting thrown some lies about Medicaid and people getting thrown off of it. But yeah, so I think it's more based on narratives like that people make these decisions. But.
Yeah. Amelia says the Republicans do such a crap job of messaging, so the Democrats will use immigration like they have been to make the current administration look bad. Heaven knows they have no policies to go on, just TDS. And we just saw that from Nick Brown. I mean, total falsehoods and insane stuff. Kathleen, I voted for immigration. As of right now, if people feel that the economy hasn't improved enough by the midterms, the lefties will focus on that. If interest rates drop and the economy keeps humming along, the issue will continue to be immigration. Yeah, I mean, that's what Democrats will focus on if the economy is doing good, and Republicans will focus on whatever the best issue is for them and selling it. I do agree that Republicans generally suck at messaging, so I don't know if that's ever going to change. I don't know why they suck so bad at messaging. And then Donald Trump is trying to alienate the conservatives who are good at messaging and have shows with tens of millions of people watching every day.
I think it's because they like to tell the truth.
Oh, that's why they're bad at messaging?
They sway towards the truth.
Ah, okay. I think everyone lies in politics, but
I mean,
I think Democrats lie more in this state for sure.
There's a lot of manipulation of the truth, but there's a lot of lying
in this state
on one side.
Amen. Democrats lie a ton. I don't know a lot of super dishonest Republican lawmakers in this state. All right, we'll get to your comments coming up next in our closing sanity check from Senator Bernie Sanders. Who would have thought? Just words of wisdom. First, if you're thinking about selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. Wes and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to make sure that your listing stands out amongst all the other listings so you can get the most possible feet in the door, offers on the table. Isn't that what we all want? Start by going to sellwithwes.com, using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. And then you can ask Wes Jones for a free market analysis. So we'll talk to you about kind of setting your expectations. Here's how homes are performing in your area. Here's maybe how long you can expect your home to sit before it sells, etc. So Wes, just a great guy, top-notch communication. And if you need to do some fixing up to your house before you sell it, he'll make sure that you only focus on the things that will pay off, right, when it sells. And then he can even help make sure that the projects are managed and you don't have to pay for it until closing, so you don't have that stress of coming out of pocket or managing construction projects or whatever it is. So sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It is simply a better way to sell your home. All right, comments as selected by Miranda, who is actively monitoring all of the chats on the 5 platforms that we live stream the show. Let's see here. Nick Brown calling ICE vigilantes. Bill Biz, $20 super chat for Nick Brown and his cronies. Fear equals votes. Oh, 100%. Keeping people scared is what keeps them voting for you. Old Sub Sailor, why isn't the Washington State federal prosecutor holding these politicians accountable for lying like they are? It's inciting violence and is wrong. Are they untouchable? So first of all, we don't have a new United States attorney in the Western District of Washington yet. For some reason, Trump hasn't chosen one, which is a disappointment because I think they could get a lot of work done, but they've only got now really 3 years to be able to do it. And, I mean, there is something called the First Amendment, even for elected officials. And so you have a right to compare ICE agents to terrorists. You have a right to call Donald Trump a fascist. Even though the outcome could be inciting violence against those ICE agents, it isn't Nick Brown saying, go hunt them down, you know, so there's a difference there. E says, great news on the Antifa arrest. Now, if they actually convict him for attempted murder and give him 25 to life, it will be a win. Yeah, I'll have to see because this just happened. So I haven't been in touch with the King County Prosecutor's Office, although I really should check quickly because they're pretty good at keeping me up to date on these things. I don't know what the charge is. I believe it'll be sort of a felony assault type thing. So as soon as we get off today, we'll touch base with them on that. Crafty Grandma Crispy, I like the FO part better than the FA part. I wish they wouldn't FA in the first place, and then there'd be no FOing. Just, you know, I don't know, peacefully protest? Is that so much to ask? Slow Nomo, kidnapped and sent home. What kind of kidnapping is that? Yeah, kidnappers usually take you away from home.
Right.
They don't kidnap you and then send you home. Very good point.
It is.
On the Portland resident speaking out against Antifa, Two Ladies Midwest Adventure, Brandi and Nicole, I actually talked to an addict yesterday who was scared because of an Antifa group because they cut up her neighbor's tent because they were trying to get help. And yes, she was black. So apparently someone living in a tent in a homeless encampment was trying to get help, so Antifa cut up her tent. I don't know. That's what Two Ladies Midwest Adventures is saying.
Protesters. These people want to do nothing but annoy, harass, cause chaos and destruction.
Bolt Up says, we the people need sleep. It needs to be on a shirt. I agree. She should sell t-shirts that say, we the people, in the pretty cursive writing, need sleep.
We the people need sleep.
And then sell it to help with her relocation costs as she tries to move. I should tell her that idea. That's actually genius.
Okay.
Not all Democrats being created equal, Matthew Cook says, the guy who actually hates cops claims his opponents His opponent hates cops. Yeah. I mean, isn't that glorious?
Mm-hmm.
And he'll get away with it, you know? I still think that it's a pretty good chance Kevin Schilling wins if Republican voters understand that they have to vote for a Democrat in this race.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, one, vote, even though it's an off-year election. And you've got to, I'm sorry, do what you want to do, of course, but suck it up and vote for the Democrat. All right, let's see here. Michael Morrow, Dems know their voters will believe whatever they say, so they just make shit up. Yep. Mm-hmm. Trump versus Epstein fallout. Patty John says this whole thing has been handled so sloppy. I agree. DC's Bees, personally, I just want justice for the victims. I do not care who is on the list. But that is justice for the victims, right? I mean, the idea here is that
prosecuting those people that
are there people who preyed on children?
Mm-hmm.
And let's make sure that if there's evidence of it, you prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Now, I do understand it, even if there's someone who's being implicated, I do think that the DOJ has a responsibility to ensure that there is some sort of backing, some sort of evidentiary evidence that would warrant criminal charges, or else you're just throwing them to the wolves, and they could have done nothing wrong. I mean, we've seen it with Trump, right? So I wouldn't wish that on anyone else. But if there's evidence, then they need to be investigated.
They said there was a bunch of child porn.
Right.
But if there's adults in that child porn participating,
and that's some pretty good evidence.
That's some pretty good evidence.
Can you ID them? Have you tried to ID them? So I don't want anyone thrown to the wolves if something is just rumors or speculation or somebody's name was brought up, because I wouldn't want it to happen again to Donald Trump. So why would I want it to happen to anyone else? So I do think they have to be careful.
I do, but it does make, I don't think it's a malicious, I don't know who they're trying to save. Like you said, I think that if anything was in there about Trump, it would have came out during Biden. If anything was out there about somebody that Biden's involved with, then it would have come out already.
Yes.
So I think that it's just messy, and both have handled this terribly.
I agree. Sorry, I had a hair. I had one of my hairs that was like, what am I seeing? And there was like a hair. Apologize.
Not a spider web.
No, not a spider this time. Let's see here. Other super chats. Son Miller. Brandi, I'm meeting with your state senator, Keith Gaynor, tomorrow for coffee. He asked me to ask you what we should talk about. I've known him since birth. Oh my gosh, you're really throwing me there. Ask if he thinks Travis Decker is still alive out there in our district somewhere. Ask him that, okay?
I'm so convinced that guy had a car stashed. And
I think he's dead.
Was long gone before anybody found the girls. I think he had a car.
I think he's dead.
He was so prepared.
I bet you they find...
He wanted people to think he was out there. That's why he left his truck. He had another vehicle.
Okay, that's your guess.
That's my guess.
I think that, and it's just horrible. I mean, it's nothing's going to bring the girls back. So I don't mean to act flippant about it, but I think they end up finding his body within a 2-mile radius of where the girls were found. I really think that he took his own life. Anyway, that got dark.
Yeah.
Let's see. Cynthia, hello, everyone. Hope y'all are having a great day. I love FAFO. I love the FO for sure. Nicole's cat says, best producer and cat mom, best host, best comment puller and Florida reporter, and best homies ever. Goat podcast. Meow. I like it. Let's end with that one.
The homies thing really gets me.
The homies? So everybody's like, what does homies mean? I don't know. One time I flubbed and I wrote homies instead of homies.
It stuck.
And it stuck. So these are all my homies. I love it. Okay.
Anyway.
Great job. Great comments. Everything. Let's get to our closing sanity check. Time. You didn't need it though, did you? You were ready. All right. So again, I am totally cool with a nuanced conversation on immigration. We didn't get here overnight. Biden's not even fully to blame for the immigration crisis. Trump's not to blame fully for what's happening now with mass deportations. We got here over a long period of time, through periods in this country where Democrats had full control in Congress and the White House, where Republicans had full control in Congress and the White House. And there really doesn't seem to be an appetite to do the difficult work to fix our nation's broken immigration system. And I will say, Senator Bernie Sanders, as cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs as he is at times, I agree 100% with what he said on CNN.
You don't have a country without borders. If you have borders, you should enforce that border. Democrats have not done as good a job as they should, period. End of discussion. That's correct. But I will tell you something else. In this country right now, you have millions and millions of people who came from Latin America or wherever, who are working in meatpacking plants. They're harvesting crops. They've been in this country for years. They're law-abiding. They are paying taxes, and they are doing some of the most dangerous, underpaid work in America. So we have to deal with immigration broadly with comprehensive immigration reform. We have failed in that. Democrats, Republicans have failed in that for many, many years.
Agreed.
We need right now to come up with some way to protect these workers who are maintaining the economy. Trump wants to throw them all out, fine. The price of food will double or triple. God knows what will happen to nursing homes in this country. So we need a rational, humane solution.
Amen. Preach, Bernie Sanders. Only one little thing I guess I disagreed with, him saying they're law-abiding. Technically, they're not law-abiding, but I get what he was trying to say. And that's the truth. Both parties have failed on immigration. That's why we're in this situation. So if you're looking at this and you're mad at Donald Trump and you're not mad at Democrats, then you are hopelessly ideological. That has been our closing sanity check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. And what a great start to the show to be able to start with some good news. Cam Higby's attacker arrested.
And it fits so well.
Fits so well with the show we already had planned. Yes. So I'm glad the Seattle Police Department finally was able to move in and make that arrest. And we'll see what happens with the charges moving forward. He better get some jail time, though. And I already know since he was arrested, he won't be able to make his first appearance until tomorrow. So unless they spring him loose, he's spending at least one night in jail.
I hope there's no air conditioning in there.
I hope the air conditioning is broken. Broken, I tell you. All right, stay cool out there, folks. 90 degrees today. No, thank you. See you tomorrow. Homies.